Chapter 1: Understanding Deep Focus. In a world that pulls our attention in 1,000 directions simultaneously, the ability to focus deeply has become not just a skill, but a superpower. We live in an era of unprecedented distraction, where our phones buzz with notifications, our computers flash with updates, and our environments constantly compete for our mental bandwidth. Yet within this chaos lies an extraordinary opportunity to cultivate a quality of attention so profound, so complete, that it transforms not only what we accomplish, but who we become in the process. This is the realm of deep focus, a state of consciousness that allows us to access our highest capabilities and experience the flow of pure engagement with life itself. Deep focus is not simply the absence of distraction. It is an active, dynamic state of mind in which our cognitive resources align like light through a lens, concentrating our mental energy onto a single point with remarkable intensity. When we achieve this state, time seems to shift, effort becomes effortless, and our work takes on a quality that surprises even ourselves. Understanding how to enter and maintain this state is perhaps one of the most valuable skills we can develop in our lifetime. The human brain, this magnificent 3-pound universe of neurons and synapses, has evolved over millions of years to manage attention in ways that once ensured our survival. Our ancestors needed to monitor their environment constantly, scanning for threats while simultaneously tracking opportunities for food and resources. This created a brain beautifully designed for vigilance, for noticing movement in the periphery, for responding quickly to novel stimuli. These same mechanisms that kept our ancestors alive now work against us in the modern world, where every notification, every advertisement, every passing thought can hijack our attention and pull us away from what truly matters. The systems in our brain that govern concentration and focus are intricate and interconnected. At the core of our attention system lies the prefrontal cortex, the executive command center positioned just behind your forehead. This remarkable region of the brain acts as the director of your mental orchestra, deciding what deserves your attention and what should be filtered out. When you consciously choose to focus on a task, your prefrontal cortex is actively suppressing irrelevant stimuli and maintaining your chosen target in working memory. It is the seat of what neuroscientists call top-down attention, the voluntary, effortful direction of your awareness. Working alongside the prefrontal cortex is the anterior cingulate cortex, a structure that helps detect conflicts and errors in your thinking. When you are trying to concentrate and a distraction appears, the anterior cingulate cortex sounds an alarm, alerting your prefrontal cortex that something is competing for resources. This conflict detection system is crucial for maintaining focus because it helps you notice when your attention has drifted and provides the signal needed to redirect it. Then there is the parietal cortex, located near the top and back of your head, which helps orient your attention in space and maintains your awareness of where things are in your environment. When you shift your focus from your computer screen to a sound outside your window, your parietal cortex is coordinating that movement of attention. Together, these regions form what neuroscientists call the attention network, a distributed system that allows you to select, maintain, and shift your focus as needed. But focus is not just about these control centers. It also depends on the state of your entire brain. The neurotransmitter dopamine plays a crucial role in motivation and sustained attention. When dopamine levels are optimal, focusing feels easier and more rewarding. Norepinephrine, released by a small structure called the locus coeruleus, helps you maintain alertness and respond to important stimuli. Even the default mode network, a collection of brain regions that activates when your mind wanders, plays a role in focus by helping you make connections and integrate information during rest periods. Understanding these systems helps us appreciate why focus is not simply a matter of willpower. It is a complex biological process that can be trained, optimized, and refined through deliberate practice. Your capacity for focus is like a muscle, growing stronger with use and weakening with neglect. Now let us distinguish between two fundamentally different types of attention, shallow focus and deep attention. This distinction is critical because many people spend their entire lives engaged in shallow work, never experiencing the profound satisfaction and productivity that comes from true depth. Shallow focus is characterized by frequent task switching, minimal cognitive demand, and surface-level engagement. When you check your email while also monitoring social media and half listening to a podcast, you are in shallow focus mode. Your attention schemes across the surface of multiple tasks, never penetrating deeply into any of them. This mode is not without value. It allows you to monitor multiple streams of information, respond quickly to changing circumstances, and handle administrative tasks efficiently. However, shallow focus has severe limitations. It produces work that is often mediocre, forgettable, and easily replicated. It drains your energy while providing little sense of accomplishment. Most importantly, it rarely leads to learning, growth, or breakthrough insights. Deep attention, by contrast, is the state in which you engage with a cognitively demanding task with full concentration, free from distraction. It is the mode in which a mathematician loses herself in a complex proof, a writer becomes one with the story unfolding on the page, a musician disappears into the music flowing through their fingers. In deep attention, your prefrontal cortex has successfully filtered out all irrelevant stimuli, allowing you to direct your full cognitive resources toward a single target. This creates several remarkable effects. First, deep attention enables what psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls flow, a state of optimal experience in which action and awareness merge. When you are in flow, you lose self-consciousness and experience a profound sense of control and engagement. Time distorts. Hours pass like minutes. You tap into capabilities you did not know you possessed. Athletes call this being in the zone. Artists speak of the muse taking over. Scientists describe it as losing themselves in the problem. Whatever the terminology, the experience is the same, a state of consciousness in which you are fully alive and completely absorbed. Second, deep attention is the gateway to mastery. Anders Ericsson's research on expertise shows that what distinguishes exceptional performers from average ones is not just the amount of practice, but the quality. Deliberate practice, the kind that leads to mastery, requires sustained concentration on challenging material at the edge of your ability. You cannot develop expertise through shallow, distracted practice. The neural adaptations that underlie skill development, the strengthening of synaptic connections and the myelination of neural pathways, occur most powerfully during periods of intense, focused engagement. Third, deep attention generates value in ways that shallow work cannot. Cal Newport, in his research on knowledge work, demonstrates that the ability to perform deep work, to produce output that is rare, valuable, and meaningful, is becoming increasingly scarce and therefore increasingly valuable in our economy. In a world where anyone can send emails and attend meetings, the ability to solve hard problems, create original work, and make sense of complex information sets you apart. This is the currency of the knowledge age, and it requires deep focus to produce. Fourth, deep attention creates psychological rewards that go far beyond mere productivity. When you engage deeply with a task, you experience what researchers call intrinsic motivation. The activity itself becomes rewarding, not because of external outcomes, but because the process of focused engagement generates its own satisfaction. This is why people lose themselves in hobbies, why programmers code through the night, why writers write even when no one is reading. The state of deep focus is inherently pleasurable, a natural high that comes from using your capabilities fully. Extended immersion, the ability to maintain deep focus over long periods, multiplies these benefits exponentially. A single hour of deep work produces more value than an entire day of shallow activity. But when you can extend that focus to 2 hours, 3 hours, even 4 hours, you access levels of insight and creativity that are simply impossible in shorter sessions. This is because many cognitive tasks have a startup cost. It takes time to load all the relevant information into working memory, to see the full scope of a problem, to make the connections between disparate elements. If you only focus for 30 minutes before switching tasks, you never get past the startup phase. You never reach the depths where the real work happens. Think of deep focus as diving into the ocean. Shallow focus is like snorkeling near the surface, where you can see colorful fish and coral but never experience the profound depths below. Deep attention is like free diving, descending into deeper waters where pressure increases and light fades, but where you discover things that surface dwellers never see. Extended immersion is like the work of deep-sea explorers who spend hours in the abyss, discovering entirely new ecosystems, solving mysteries, bringing back treasures from the depths. The benefits of cultivating this capacity are staggering. Professionally, it makes you more productive, more creative, and more valuable. A person who can focus deeply for 4 hours produces more meaningful output than most people produce in a week. Personally, it enhances your sense of meaning and satisfaction. The philosopher Martin Heidegger spoke of being fully present in the world, engaged in what he called authentic existence. Deep focus is one of the most accessible paths to this authentic way of being. When you are fully absorbed in meaningful activity, you are not anxious about the future or regretful about the past. You are simply here, now, alive in the present moment. Neurologically, regular practice of deep focus strengthens your attention networks, making it easier to concentrate over time. Studies show that individuals who regularly engage in focused mental work show increased gray matter density in the prefrontal cortex and enhanced connectivity between attention networks. Your brain physically adapts to support the activities you regularly perform. If you spend your days in distraction, your brain will optimize for distraction. If you practice deep focus, your brain will become a focusing machine. Moreover, deep focus appears to have protective effects against cognitive decline. Research suggests that regular engagement in cognitively demanding activities that require sustained attention may help build cognitive reserve, protecting against dementia and age-related mental decline. When you challenge your attention system regularly, you keep it strong and flexible, maintaining your mental capabilities far longer than those who allow their minds to idle in constant distraction. The tragedy of our current moment is that most people have lost touch with their capacity for deep focus. The average knowledge worker checks their email every 6 minutes. The typical person touches their phone over 2,000 times per day. We have become addicted to the shallow, to the quick hit of novelty that comes from a new notification or a fresh piece of content. In doing so, we have sacrificed something profound: the ability to engage fully with ideas, with work, with other people, with ourselves. But here is the beautiful truth: this capacity is not lost. It is merely dormant, waiting to be reawakened. Your brain retains its ability to focus deeply, no matter how long it has been since you last exercised this capability. The attention networks remain, ready to be strengthened. The experience of flow is still accessible, just below the surface of your scattered awareness. What is required is not some extraordinary talent or genetic gift, but simply the knowledge of how these systems work and the commitment to train them systematically. The journey toward deep focus is a journey toward a different way of being in the world. It is about reclaiming your attention from the countless forces that seek to capture it. It is about recognizing that your ability to concentrate is perhaps your most precious resource, the foundation of everything meaningful you will create or experience. It is about understanding that in a world of infinite distraction, the ability to focus is not just a productivity tool, but a way of life, a statement about what you value and who you choose to be. As we move forward, we will explore the practical techniques for developing this capacity, the obstacles you will face, and the methods for overcoming them. We will examine how to structure your environment, your schedule, and your habits to support deep work. We will look at the role of rest and recovery in maintaining focus. We will investigate the relationship between physical health and mental clarity. But all of these practical considerations rest on this foundation: the recognition that deep focus matters profoundly, that it is both possible and trainable, and that your life will be transformed by cultivating it. The distracted life is the superficial life, skimming across the surface of experience without ever penetrating to the depths. The focused life is the meaningful life, in which you engage fully with what matters most, creating work that lasts, relationships that satisfy, and a sense of purpose that sustains you. The choice between these two paths is not made once, but in every moment, in every decision about where to direct your attention. And the beautiful secret is that each time you choose focus over distraction, you strengthen your capacity to make that choice again. Each moment of deep attention makes the next one easier. Each session of flow makes it more accessible in the future. Your brain is waiting, ready to focus, ready to engage, ready to enter those profound states of clarity and capability that define your highest potential. The question is not whether you are capable of deep focus. You are. The question is whether you will commit to developing this capacity, whether you will treat your attention as the precious resource it is, whether you will do the work required to reclaim your mind from the forces of distraction that surround us all. This is not just about productivity or achievement, though both will follow. This is about living fully, about being present for your own life, about experiencing the profound satisfaction that comes from using your mind in the way it was meant to be used, focused, engaged, and alive with purpose. Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Chapter 2: What creates the flow state? In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world still sleeps and silence wraps around consciousness like a gentle blanket, there exists a threshold between ordinary awareness and extraordinary capability. This threshold is not merely a metaphor. It is a neurological reality, a state of being that researchers have spent decades studying, athletes have chased throughout their careers, and artists have touched in their most inspired moments. We call this state flow, and understanding how to create it may be the most valuable skill you can develop in your lifetime. Flow is not simply about working harder or pushing yourself beyond your limits. It is something far more nuanced, far more profound. When you enter flow, time itself seems to change its nature. Hours pass like minutes. The voice of self-doubt that normally chatters in the background of your mind falls completely silent. Your actions and awareness merge into a single, unified experience. You are not thinking about what you are doing. You are simply doing it, with a clarity and precision that feels almost superhuman. This is not an exaggeration. Studies using brain imaging technology have shown that when people enter flow states, their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for self-monitoring and conscious decision-making, actually becomes less active. This phenomenon, called transient hypofrontality, explains why flow feels so effortless. Your brain is operating with greater efficiency, routing neural signals along more direct pathways, bypassing the circuits that create doubt and hesitation. The Hungarian psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who first named and systematically studied flow in the 1970s, described it as the optimal experience. Through thousands of interviews with people across cultures, professions, and age groups, he discovered that the moments people remembered as their best, most fulfilling, most alive were not moments of passive relaxation or entertainment. They were moments of intense engagement with challenging tasks. A surgeon performing a complex operation. A rock climber ascending a difficult face. A musician lost in improvisation. A programmer solving an elegant problem. A writer whose words pour onto the page as if channeled from somewhere beyond conscious thought. In each case, the person was stretched to their limits, fully absorbed, performing at their peak. And perhaps most importantly, they were deeply, profoundly happy. This happiness is not the fleeting pleasure of momentary gratification. It is something richer, what the ancient Greeks called eudaimonia, a sense of fulfillment that comes from expressing your highest capabilities. Flow is where meaning lives. It is where growth happens. It is where you touch the furthest edge of what you are capable of becoming. Understanding how to create flow is therefore not a luxury or an interesting optimization technique. It is fundamental to living a life of purpose and continuous evolution. So what creates this remarkable state? What are the conditions that open the door to flow? The research is surprisingly consistent. Flow does not arise randomly. It emerges when specific elements align, like tumblers in a lock clicking into place. When you understand these elements, you can begin to engineer flow into your life with remarkable reliability. The first and perhaps most crucial condition is the balance between challenge and skill. This is the golden ratio that determines whether you will enter flow or fall into anxiety or boredom. Imagine your current skill level in any domain as a horizontal line. Now imagine the difficulty of the task before you as another line. If the task difficulty is far above your skill level, you experience anxiety. Your nervous system floods with cortisol and adrenaline. You feel overwhelmed, out of your depth, stressed. Your performance suffers because your brain is in threat mode rather than growth mode. Conversely, if the task is far below your skill level, you experience boredom. There is no engagement, no activation of your attention systems, no sense of aliveness. Your mind wanders. You feel listless and unmotivated. Flow exists in the narrow channel between these two states. It emerges when the challenge is approximately 4% beyond your current skill level. Not 10%. Not 20%. Just slightly beyond comfortable. This precision matters because it creates what neuroscientists call the Goldilocks zone of arousal. Your brain releases just enough dopamine and norepinephrine to heighten focus and motivation without tipping into panic. You are stretched but not broken. Engaged but not overwhelmed. This is why skilled video game designers understand flow intuitively. The best games increase difficulty at precisely the rate that players increase skill, keeping them perpetually in that narrow channel. You can apply this same principle to any domain of your life. If you are a writer, do not try to produce a masterpiece on day one. That gap between challenge and skill is too vast. Instead, aim to write something slightly better than you wrote yesterday. If you are learning a new language, do not immerse yourself in complex philosophical texts immediately. Find material that contains perhaps 10% unfamiliar vocabulary. Your brain can infer meaning from context for those new words, learning without excessive strain. If you are developing a physical skill, whether it is playing an instrument or practicing a sport, always train at the edge of your current capability. Not so far beyond it that you flail and fail repeatedly, but not so comfortably within it that your attention drifts. This edge is where neural pathways strengthen. This edge is where flow lives. The challenge-skill balance is dynamic, not static. As your skills grow, you must continuously increase the difficulty to maintain flow. This is why flow states naturally drive growth. They require you to keep pushing forward. The surfer seeks bigger waves. The chess player seeks stronger opponents. The entrepreneur tackles more complex problems. Flow pulls you upward along a spiral of increasing capability. This is not exhausting when done correctly. It is energizing. It is one of the great paradoxes of flow that even though you are working at your limits, you often emerge from extended flow states feeling more energized than when you began. The deep engagement itself becomes restorative. Beyond the challenge-skill balance, flow requires clear goals. Notice I did not say distant goals or abstract goals. Flow emerges from immediate, unambiguous objectives. A mountain climber in flow is not thinking about becoming the world's greatest climber. She is thinking about the next handhold. The next placement of her foot. The surgeon is not contemplating her career trajectory during a complex procedure. He is focused on the precise angle of the incision, the next suture, the monitoring of vital signs. This moment-to-moment clarity is essential because it gives your attention something concrete to lock onto. When goals are vague or far in the future, your mind has nothing to anchor to in the present. It wanders. It worries. It plans and evaluates and judges. But when the goal is clear and immediate, all of that mental noise drops away. There is only the task. Only this moment. Only this action. If you are writing, the clear goal might be completing this paragraph with a specific insight fully expressed. If you are coding, it might be making this function work correctly. If you are in conversation, it might be truly understanding what the other person is communicating. The goals do not need to be large. They need to be clear and achievable within a short time frame. Closely related to clear goals is immediate feedback. Flow requires that you know, moment by moment, how you are doing. Are you succeeding or failing? Are you on track or veering off course? This feedback allows for constant micro-adjustments that keep you in the flow channel. The jazz musician hears instantly whether the note she played fits the harmonic structure. The athlete feels immediately whether his form is correct. The programmer sees right away whether the code compiles without errors. This feedback loop is so tight that there is no gap between action and awareness of result. You become a self-correcting system, continuously calibrating and optimizing. In many modern work environments, feedback is delayed or ambiguous. You write a report and hear back weeks later. You implement a strategy and wait months to see results. This delay makes flow difficult or impossible. When you can, restructure your activities to tighten the feedback loop. Break large projects into smaller components that you can evaluate quickly. Create metrics that give you daily or hourly information about your progress. Find ways to test your ideas rapidly rather than investing weeks or months before knowing if you are on the right path. The tighter your feedback loop, the more accessible flow becomes. Flow also requires intense concentration on the present moment. This seems obvious, but in practice it is the element most people struggle with. We live in an age of continuous partial attention, where most people check their phones every few minutes, where the average knowledge worker is interrupted every 3 minutes, where multitasking is mistakenly celebrated as a virtue. These habits are the antithesis of flow. Flow demands that you bring the full beam of your attention to bear on a single point. No divided focus. No background worry. No part of your mind elsewhere. This kind of attention is a skill that must be trained. Your brain has evolved to be distractible because scanning for threats and opportunities kept your ancestors alive. The wandering mind was adaptive in the ancestral environment. But the modern environment punishes wandering attention and rewards sustained focus. You must therefore retrain your attention systems deliberately. This is not about willpower or forcing yourself to concentrate. It is about creating conditions that make deep focus the natural state. Remove temptations from your environment. Close unnecessary applications. Silence your phone. Work in blocks of time when you are protected from interruption. Train yourself to notice when your attention wanders and gently return it to the task without self-judgment. Over weeks and months, your capacity for sustained attention will grow like a muscle. There is a biochemical dimension to this as well. When you enter flow, your brain releases a cascade of neurochemicals that enhance performance. Norepinephrine tightens focus, helping you ignore distractions. Dopamine improves pattern recognition and makes you feel motivated and energized. Endorphins block pain and create a sense of ease. Anandamide improves lateral thinking and pattern recognition while reducing fear. Serotonin creates a feeling of inner peace and satisfaction. This is one of the most potent neurochemical combinations your brain can produce naturally. It is more powerful than almost any drug for enhancing cognitive and physical performance. And you can trigger it reliably once you understand the conditions. One often overlooked condition for flow is the loss of self-consciousness. In ordinary awareness, part of your mind is always watching yourself, judging your performance, worrying about how others perceive you. This self-monitoring is exhausting and performance-limiting. In flow, this inner critic goes silent. You are not thinking about yourself. You are not evaluating whether you are doing well. You are completely absorbed in the activity itself. Ironically, this loss of self-consciousness often leads to your best performance. When you stop trying to look good or smart or capable, you actually become more capable. Your actions become more spontaneous, more intuitive, more precisely calibrated to the demands of the moment. This is why flow feels so liberating. For the duration of the flow state, you are free from the burden of self. You are not your anxieties or your ambitions or your identity. You are pure action, pure awareness, pure capability. This is deeply restorative. Many people who regularly access flow states report that these experiences are some of the few times they feel truly themselves, which is paradoxical because they are precisely the times when they are least aware of having a self. Perhaps what we experience as our truest self is not the narrative we tell about ourselves but the capacity for full engagement with reality. The environment plays a significant role in facilitating or blocking flow. Certain spaces naturally promote focus. Think of a library or a quiet room at dawn or a secluded natural setting. These environments share common features. They have minimal distractions. They have a quality of stillness that allows your nervous system to settle. They may have a sense of beauty or order that is psychologically nourishing without being overstimulating. You can engineer your workspace to have these qualities. Remove clutter. Control lighting. Minimize noise or use sound that aids concentration rather than disrupting it. Some people enter flow more easily with complete silence. Others benefit from ambient sound or music without lyrics. Experiment to discover what works for you, but be intentional about creating a space that supports rather than sabotages deep focus. Timing matters as well. Your brain's capacity for flow is not constant throughout the day. Most people have a window of peak cognitive performance, often in the morning hours after sleep has cleared metabolic waste from the brain but before decision fatigue sets in. For some people, this window is late at night. Learn your own rhythm and protect your peak hours for your most important and challenging work. Do not squander these hours on email or meetings or administrative tasks. These precious hours of peak mental clarity are finite. Treat them as sacred. As you begin to practice entering flow deliberately, you will notice signals that indicate you are approaching or entering the flow zone. Time perception shifts. You may look up and realize hours have passed when you thought it had been minutes. Or occasionally, time seems to slow down, and you perceive events unfolding in what feels like slow motion. Athletes in flow often report this sensation. A tennis player sees the ball moving slowly enough that she can see the scenes rotating. A race car driver perceives ample time to make decisions that normally happen in fractions of a second. This temporal distortion occurs because in flow, your brain processes more information per unit of actual time. Your sense of effort changes as well. Before flow, an activity requires conscious effort and willpower. You must push yourself to maintain focus. But as you enter flow, the effort becomes effortless. This sounds contradictory, but it is the experience everyone reports. You are working intensely, but it does not feel like work. There is no internal resistance, no part of you wanting to be elsewhere. The action carries you forward with its own momentum. You may even feel a sense of being pulled through the activity by something beyond yourself. Your performance improves noticeably. You make fewer mistakes. Your timing is better. Your insights are deeper. Your movements are more fluid. You access capabilities that seemed unavailable in ordinary consciousness. This is not imagination. Researchers have measured dramatically improved performance across virtually every domain when people are in flow. Reaction times quicken. Creative problem solving improves by over 400%. Learning rates accelerate. The version of yourself in flow is measurably more capable than the version of yourself outside of flow. You feel a deep sense of control, not over outcomes but over your actions in the present moment. There is no anxiety about results. You trust your ability to respond to whatever arises. This sense of control is empowering and calming simultaneously. You are not hoping you will perform well. You are directly experiencing yourself performing well, and that direct experience generates confidence that feeds back into even better performance. Perhaps most recognizably, you feel intensely alive. Your senses are sharp. Colors seem brighter. Sounds are clearer. Your body feels capable and responsive. There is a sense of joy or even euphoria that arises not from external circumstances but from the activity itself. This is intrinsic motivation in its purest form. You are not doing the activity to achieve some external reward. The activity itself is the reward. This is why flow is so addictive in the healthiest sense. Once you have tasted it, you want to return to it again and again. As you develop the ability to enter flow more reliably, you may notice that the skills you are building extend far beyond improved performance in specific tasks. You are training your nervous system to regulate itself more effectively. You are learning to manage your attention, which is perhaps the most valuable skill in the modern world. You are building self-knowledge about the conditions under which you thrive. You are creating a reservoir of peak experiences that you can draw upon during difficult times. You are developing trust in your own capability. These metaskills transfer across every domain of your life. The path to flow mastery is gradual but reliable. In the beginning, you may touch flow only briefly and unpredictably. A few minutes here or there when conditions happen to align. With practice, those minutes extend to longer durations. You begin to recognize the conditions that work for you and create them more deliberately. You learn to notice when you are slipping out of flow and gently guide yourself back. You build rituals and routines that serve as on-ramps to the flow state. Eventually, accessing flow becomes almost natural, something you can enter within minutes when you need to. The more time you spend in flow, the more your baseline state begins to resemble flow. The qualities of flow, the clarity and focus and ease, begin to infuse your ordinary awareness. You become someone who operates from a different center, someone less driven by anxiety and ego, someone more connected to capability and purpose. This transformation is not small. It changes how you work, how you create, how you solve problems, how you interact with challenges. It changes your relationship with time, making you feel less rushed and more present. It changes your emotional baseline, reducing anxiety and increasing satisfaction. It changes your trajectory, allowing you to achieve things that would have been impossible without the accelerated learning and performance that flow provides. Flow is not merely a pleasant experience or a productivity hack. It is a doorway to becoming more fully yourself, to expressing your potential more completely, to living with greater depth and meaning. And now that you understand what creates it, that doorway is available to you whenever you choose to step through it. Chapter 3: Removing Distractions at the Source. The path to deep focus begins not with willpower, but with wisdom. It begins with the recognition that our attention is under siege, bombarded from all sides by forces designed specifically to capture and fragment it. Before we can build the cathedral of concentration, we must first clear the ground of the rubble that clutters it. This is the work of removing distractions at their source, of creating conditions in which focus becomes not an act of heroic resistance, but the natural state of being. This chapter is about taking control of your attentional environment, both external and internal, so that the path to deep work becomes clear and unobstructed. We must begin by confronting a difficult truth: the modern digital environment is not neutral. It has been engineered, with extraordinary sophistication and billions of dollars of investment, to capture and monetize your attention. Every app on your phone, every website you visit, every digital tool you use has been optimized through countless iterations to be as engaging, as sticky, as addictive as possible. Teams of designers, psychologists, and engineers have worked tirelessly to exploit the vulnerabilities in human attention, to trigger dopamine responses, to create compulsion loops that keep you coming back for just one more check, one more scroll, one more click. The notification is perhaps the most insidious weapon in this arsenal. Each ping, each buzz, each red badge is a small assault on your prefrontal cortex, forcing it to disengage from whatever task occupied it and redirect attention to evaluate the incoming information. Even if you resist checking immediately, the notification creates what psychologists call attention residue. Part of your mind remains occupied with the unresolved notification, wondering what it might be, whether it is important, whether you should check it. This residue degrades your cognitive performance significantly, even though you may not consciously notice its effects. Research by Sophie Leroy demonstrates that when you switch from one task to another, your attention does not immediately follow. A residue of your attention remains stuck on the previous task, especially if it was interrupted before completion or if you were particularly engaged with it. This residue grows with each interruption, each notification, each moment of task switching, until your attention is so fragmented that deep focus becomes impossible. You are trying to think with a mind that has been shattered into 1,000 pieces, each piece still attached to some previous stimulus or unfinished task. But notifications are only the visible tip of a much larger problem. Beneath the surface lies what we might call digital noise, a constant hum of potential distractions that creates a state of continuous partial attention. Even when your phone is silent, the mere presence of it on your desk affects your cognitive capacity. A study by Adrian Ward and colleagues at the University of Texas found that participants who had their phones in another room significantly outperformed those who had their phones on their desk face down, even though both groups were told to ignore their phones. The researchers called this effect brain drain. Simply having your phone within reach reduces your available cognitive capacity because part of your executive function is occupied with the task of not picking it up. This extends beyond phones to all digital devices and platforms. Your computer, with its multiple tabs and applications, creates a landscape of potential distractions. Email clients, chat applications, social media sites, news feeds, each one represents a possible escape route from the discomfort of focused work. Even if you have the discipline not to actively check these platforms, knowing they are there, knowing that new information might be waiting, creates a subtle but persistent cognitive load. Your attention is not free to fully engage with your primary task because part of it is standing guard against these potential interruptions. The hidden attention drains go even deeper. Many of the digital tools we use for work are themselves designed with engagement mechanics borrowed from social media and gaming. They include features designed to keep you checking back, to create urgency, to make you feel like you might be missing something important. The endless feed, the autoplay video, the suggested content algorithm, all of these are designed to extend your session, to keep you engaged beyond what is necessary or useful. What begins as a legitimate work task, checking an email or looking up a reference, easily spirals into 20 minutes of digital wandering as one thing leads to another in a chain of clicks that never truly satisfies. We must also consider the more subtle forms of digital distraction that masquerade as productivity. The busy work of responding to non-urgent emails, the endless rearranging of tasks in productivity apps, the compulsive checking of metrics and analytics, the participation in meetings and group chats that produce no real value. These activities feel like work because they keep us busy, but they are actually sophisticated forms of procrastination, ways of avoiding the harder, deeper work that requires genuine focus. They provide the psychological satisfaction of feeling productive without the actual discomfort of extended concentration. So what is to be done? The solution begins with a radical intervention, removing these distractions at their source rather than relying on willpower to resist them in the moment. Willpower is a finite resource, depleted by use throughout the day. If you rely on willpower to resist your phone, your email, your chat applications, you will inevitably fail when your willpower reserves run low. But if you structure your environment so that these distractions are simply not present during focus periods, you remove the need for resistance entirely. The temptation that does not exist cannot distract you. Start with your phone, the single most powerful distraction device ever created. During deep work sessions, your phone should not be in the same room as you. Not face down on your desk. Not in your pocket on silent. Not even in your bag across the room. It should be in another space entirely, ideally one that requires physical effort to access. Place it in a drawer in another room, give it to a colleague, lock it in your car. The goal is to create enough friction that checking it requires a conscious decision and physical effort, transforming it from an automatic impulse to a deliberate choice. For many people, this recommendation triggers anxiety. What if there is an emergency? What if someone needs to reach me urgently? These are legitimate concerns, but they must be weighed against the very real cost of constant availability. True emergencies are extraordinarily rare. Most of what feels urgent is simply the artificial urgency created by our always-on culture. You can inform important people in your life that you will be unreachable during certain hours and provide an alternative way to reach you in genuine emergencies. You can check your phone during breaks between focus sessions. What you cannot do is maintain deep focus while remaining tethered to a device designed to interrupt you. Your computer requires a different approach because you likely need it for your deep work. The solution here is to transform it from a distraction machine into a single-purpose tool during focus sessions. This means closing all applications and browser tabs not directly related to your current task. Close your email client. Log out of all chat applications. Block social media sites using one of many available tools like Freedom, Cold Turkey, or the built-in parental controls on your operating system. Disconnect from the internet entirely if your task allows it. Each closed application, each blocked site, is one fewer drain on your attention. For browser-based work, use a separate browser profile or a different browser entirely for focus work, one that is not logged into any social media accounts, that has no saved passwords for distracting sites, that has only the minimal extensions necessary for your task. When you open this focus browser, it should be a clean slate, free from the cookies in history and saved logins that make distraction so effortless. You can also use browser extensions that limit you to specific sites during focus periods, creating a whitelist of only the resources you need and blocking everything else. Many people resist these measures because they seem extreme, because they involve giving up the convenience of constant access to information and communication. But this resistance reveals a deeper issue. We have become so accustomed to distraction that focus feels unnatural, even frightening. We have grown dependent on the constant stimulation of digital information, using it to avoid boredom, discomfort, and the challenging work of sustained concentration. Breaking this dependence requires acknowledging it and deliberately choosing a different way of engaging with technology. Consider implementing what Cal Newport calls a phone foyer, a physical location near your home or office entrance where your phone lives when you are doing focused work. When you return from being out, the phone goes in the foyer. When you have a designated break, you can visit the phone in the foyer. This creates a physical boundary between your focused self and your connected self, making the transition between modes deliberate rather than automatic. Now we must turn to the physical environment beyond the digital realm. Your workspace profoundly affects your ability to focus. A cluttered desk is a cluttered mind, as the saying goes, and there is neuroscientific truth to this. Visual clutter competes for your attention, forcing your visual processing system to work harder to filter out irrelevant stimuli. Studies using fMRI brain scanning show that physical clutter in your surroundings actually competes for your attention in the same way that digital distractions do, reducing your ability to focus and process information. Create a workspace that supports focus by removing everything that is not essential to your current task. This does not mean your entire office must be minimalist, but your immediate work surface should contain only what you need for the task at hand. Clear away papers, books, decorative objects, anything that might catch your eye and pull your attention away. Some people find it helpful to have a dedicated focus-only workspace that they use exclusively for deep work, separate from the space where they handle email and administrative tasks. This creates a strong environmental cue that primes your brain for focus. Consider the sensory environment as well. Research on cognitive performance shows that many people focus best in moderate ambient noise, around 70 decibels, roughly the volume of a quiet cafe. Complete silence can actually be distracting for some people because their attention latches onto every tiny sound. Others focus best in absolute quiet. Experiment to discover your optimal sound environment. If you work in a noisy space, noise-canceling headphones can be invaluable, not just for blocking sound but as a social signal to others that you are not available for interruption. Music can support or hinder focus depending on the task and the music. For tasks requiring verbal processing, reading, writing, or working with language, music with lyrics typically impairs performance because the language processing centers of your brain are trying to process both the words in the music and the words in your task. Instrumental music, particularly music without dramatic changes in tempo or volume, can enhance focus for many people. Some find that the same music played repeatedly becomes a powerful cue for entering focus states. Others prefer the sound of nature, white noise, or specialized focus soundscapes. Lighting matters more than most people realize. Bright, blue-enriched light, similar to daylight, enhances alertness and cognitive performance. Dim, warm lighting signals to your circadian system that it is time to wind down. If possible, work in natural daylight or under bright, cool-toned artificial lighting during focus periods. Avoid working in dim lighting, which makes it harder for your brain to maintain alertness. Some people find that a small lamp providing focused task lighting, combined with dimmer ambient lighting, helps concentrate attention on the work surface. Temperature affects focus as well. Research shows that cognitive performance peaks at slightly cool temperatures, around 68 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. When you are too warm, your body diverts resources to cooling, and cognitive performance suffers. When you are too cold, you become distracted by discomfort. Find the temperature that feels slightly cool but comfortable and maintain it during focus sessions. But even with a perfectly designed external environment, we cannot achieve deep focus if our internal environment, our mental landscape, remains cluttered with thoughts, worries, and unresolved concerns. This internal mental clutter may be the most challenging form of distraction to address because it comes from within, traveling with us wherever we go, resistant to environmental interventions. The mind has been compared to a lake. When the surface is choppy with waves, it is difficult to see clearly into the depths. When the surface is calm, you can see all the way to the bottom. Mental clutter creates those waves, disturbing the clarity of consciousness. These disturbances come in many forms. Unfinished tasks that nag at your attention, decisions you have been avoiding, conflicts in relationships, financial worries, health concerns, existential questions about purpose and meaning. Each unresolved item occupies a small portion of your working memory, reducing the cognitive resources available for focused work. The solution begins with what David Allen, creator of the Getting Things Done system, calls a mind sweep. Take time, ideally once a week, to empty your mind of all the things occupying it. Sit with a blank document or notebook and write down everything that has your attention: tasks you need to complete, decisions you need to make, things you want to remember, ideas you have been considering, worries that keep recurring. Do not judge or organize as you write. Simply capture everything until your mind feels empty, until you cannot think of anything else that has been taking up mental space. Once you have captured everything, process each item. For tasks, decide on the very next physical action required and when you will do it. For decisions, either make them immediately or schedule a time to make them. For worries, determine if there is any action you can take, and if not, consciously acknowledge that worrying serves no purpose and let it go. For ideas, file them in a trusted system where you can return to them later. The key is to transform vague concerns into concrete next actions or conscious decisions not to act. What you cannot do is leave them floating in your mind, unresolved and attention-consuming. Create what Alan calls a trusted system, a place outside your head where you track commitments, tasks, and information. When you trust that everything important is captured in a system you regularly review, your mind stops trying to hold on to it all. This frees up enormous cognitive resources for focus. Your system can be analog or digital, simple or complex. What matters is that you trust it completely and use it consistently. When a thought arises during a focus session, you can quickly capture it in your system and return to your task, knowing it will not be lost. Another powerful technique for reducing internal clutter is what might be called a pre-focus ritual, a short practice before each deep work session to clear your mind and prepare for concentration. This might involve 5 minutes of meditation, focusing on your breath and allowing thoughts to arise and pass without engagement. It might involve journaling, doing a brief brain dump of whatever is on your mind. It might involve a short walk, movement that helps discharge physical restlessness and mental preoccupation. The specific activity matters less than the intention. To create a clear boundary between your distracted state and your focused state, to give yourself permission to let go of everything except the task at hand. During the focus session itself, keep a notepad nearby for what Cal Newport calls open loops. When a thought arises that seems important, when you remember something you need to do, when an idea occurs to you, quickly jot it down and return to your task. This prevents the thought from cycling repeatedly through your mind, demanding attention. You have captured it, and you can return to it later. This simple practice can make the difference between a focus session constantly interrupted by intrusive thoughts and one characterized by sustained, clear attention. Worry deserves special attention because it is perhaps the most common form of internal distraction. The anxious mind constantly spins scenarios, rehearsing conversations, anticipating problems, replaying past mistakes. This mental activity feels productive because it creates the illusion of preparation and problem solving, but in reality, it is almost entirely useless. Worry does not solve problems. It does not prevent bad outcomes. It simply consumes attention and generates suffering. The antidote to worry is twofold. First, distinguish between productive concern and unproductive worry. Productive concern identifies a problem and then takes action to address it. Unproductive worry simply cycles through anxiety without leading to action. When you notice yourself worrying, ask, is there any action I can take right now to address this concern? If yes, take the action or schedule it. If no, consciously choose to redirect your attention, recognizing that the worry serves no purpose. This takes practice, but over time you can train your mind to recognize and release unproductive worry quickly. Second, schedule worry time. This may sound paradoxical, but it works. Set aside 15 minutes each day as designated worry time. When worries arise during the day, write them down and tell yourself you will think about them during worry time. When worry time arrives, review your list and worry about each item deliberately. You will often find that the concerns that seemed urgent earlier now seem less important, or that solutions arise naturally when you give them focused attention. This practice helps break the habit of constant, scattered worrying and contains it to a specific time. Now we must address the crucial role of routine in supporting focus. The focused life cannot be built on willpower and spontaneous motivation. It must be built on systems, on habits, on routines that make focus the path of least resistance. The question is not whether you feel like focusing today, but whether your routine naturally leads you into focus without requiring conscious decision making. Begin by examining your daily schedule and identifying your peak cognitive hours, the times when your mental energy is naturally highest. For most people, this is the first few hours after waking, before the demands of the day deplete their cognitive resources. These precious hours should be zealously protected for your most important deep work. This means no email, no meetings, no administrative tasks during this time. Your peak hours are too valuable to waste on shallow work that could be done when your energy is lower. Structure your day in blocks. Time blocking, the practice of assigning specific activities to specific times, eliminates the constant decision-making about what to do next. Each decision, even small ones, consumes willpower. When you wake up knowing exactly what you will work on and when, you conserve your willpower for the work itself. Create a weekly template that includes your deep work blocks, marking them as sacred, non-negotiable time. Treat these blocks as seriously as you would an important meeting, because they are far more important than most meetings. Within each day, cluster shallow tasks together rather than allowing them to fragment your day. Designate specific times for email, for administrative work, for meetings. Outside these designated times, these activities are off limits. This batching of shallow work serves multiple purposes. It reduces the number of context switches, which are cognitively expensive. It makes you more efficient at shallow work because you can maintain a shallow work mindset without constantly shifting gears. Most importantly, it protects large, unbroken stretches of time for deep work. Create a shutdown ritual at the end of each workday. This ritual signals to your brain that work is complete and helps you transition to rest and recovery. Review what you accomplished, process any remaining open loops, plan the next day, and then consciously close the door on work. Many people find it helpful to have a specific phrase they say to themselves or write down, something like work complete or shutdown initiated. This may seem silly, but rituals work by creating strong psychological cues. When you consistently perform the same shutdown ritual, it becomes a powerful signal that enables you to stop thinking about work and fully rest. The focus-friendly routine also includes what happens outside of work hours. Your capacity for focus tomorrow depends on how you spend your time today outside of focus sessions. Sleep is non-negotiable. When you are sleep-deprived, your prefrontal cortex, the very region responsible for focus and self-control, functions poorly. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of high-quality sleep each night. Maintain a consistent sleep schedule. Avoid screens for at least an hour before bed. Create a cool, dark sleeping environment. Sleep is not time wasted. It is when your brain consolidates learning, clears metabolic waste, and prepares for the cognitive demands of the next day. Exercise supports focus in multiple ways. It increases blood flow to the brain, promotes the growth of new neurons, enhances the function of neurotransmitters involved in attention, and reduces anxiety and depression. Even a single bout of exercise improves cognitive function for hours afterward. Regular exercise creates lasting improvements in brain structure and function. This does not require intense training. A daily walk, some gentle yoga, basic strength training, any regular movement supports your capacity for focus. Many people find that exercise before a focus session is particularly effective, clearing mental cobwebs and priming the brain for concentration. Nutrition affects attention more than most people realize. The brain, despite being only 2% of body weight, consumes about 20% of the body's energy. When blood sugar is unstable, swinging from high to low throughout the day, cognitive performance swings with it. Eating in a way that stabilizes blood sugar, emphasizing whole foods, adequate protein, healthy fats, and complex carbohydrates while minimizing refined sugars and processed foods, supports stable energy and consistent focus. Stay hydrated, as even mild dehydration impairs cognitive function. Consider the timing of meals. Large meals trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, making you drowsy. Light meals or working in a fasted state often supports better focus. The social dimension of your routine matters as well. Communicate your focus schedule to the people in your life. Let colleagues know when you are unavailable. Ask family members to respect your focus time. This requires courage because it means saying no to some requests, disappointing some expectations, setting boundaries around your time and attention. But without these boundaries, you remain perpetually available, perpetually interruptible, and deep focus remains impossible. All of these elements, the removal of digital distractions, the design of your physical environment, the clearing of mental clutter, and the creation of focus-friendly routines, work together to create conditions in which focus becomes natural. You are not fighting against your environment and your habits. You are supported by them. The path to deep work is clear because you have cleared it deliberately and systematically. This is not about perfection. You will not eliminate all distractions. Some interruptions are inevitable. What matters is the direction of movement, the consistent effort to create better conditions for focus. Each small change compounds over time. Each distraction removed makes the next one easier to eliminate. Each focus session strengthens your capacity for the next. Remember that this work of clearing away distractions is not separate from deep focus itself. It is the foundation on which deep focus is built. You cannot build a house on unstable ground. You cannot achieve sustained concentration in an environment optimized for distraction. The work of creating conditions for focus is itself a practice of focus, requiring attention, intention, and consistent effort. But it is work that pays dividends every day, making everything else you do more effective, more satisfying, more aligned with your deepest values and highest capabilities. Chapter 4: Techniques for Deep Focus and Flow. There is a particular quality to the mind when it is truly focused, a crystalline clarity that feels almost tangible. In this state, your awareness becomes like a laser beam, precise and powerful, cutting through complexity with ease. Every detail comes into sharp relief. Solutions to problems that seemed intractable suddenly reveal themselves. Time loses its usual weight and urgency. You are simply here, fully present, completely engaged. This is not a mystical experience reserved for monks or masters. It is a natural capacity of your nervous system, and like any capacity, it can be trained, refined, and strengthened through deliberate practice. The techniques we will explore are not theoretical concepts. They are practical tools that have been tested across disciplines, from neuroscience laboratories to meditation halls, from the training rooms of elite athletes to the studios of world-class artists. Each technique works with your biology rather than against it, creating conditions that allow your brain to settle into its most powerful modes of operation. Some will resonate with you immediately. Others may require patience and experimentation. The key is to approach this as a practice, understanding that mastery develops gradually through consistent application rather than arriving in a sudden revelation. Let us begin with the foundation of all attention control, the breath. Your breathing is the bridge between your conscious and unconscious mind, between your voluntary and involuntary nervous systems. It is also the most direct tool you have for regulating your state of consciousness. When your breath is shallow and rapid, your sympathetic nervous system activates, preparing you for action or threat. Your mind becomes restless and scattered. When your breath is slow and deep, your parasympathetic nervous system engages, creating a state of calm alertness that is ideal for sustained focus. The beauty of breathwork is its accessibility. You can practice it anywhere, anytime, without equipment or special conditions. Yet its simplicity should not be mistaken for weakness. Controlled breathing is one of the most powerful interventions available for shifting your mental state. Special operations soldiers use it to maintain calm under extreme stress. Surgeons use it to steady their hands before delicate procedures. Musicians use it to manage performance anxiety. You can use it to create the internal conditions for flow. The technique known as box breathing is particularly effective for establishing focus. The practice is elegant in its geometry. You inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4. You hold your breath for a count of 4. You exhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4. You hold your breath again for a count of 4. Then you repeat the cycle. As you breathe in this pattern, your heart rate variability increases, which is a marker of nervous system flexibility and resilience. Your prefrontal cortex, the executive control center of your brain, becomes more active and more efficient.
The default mode network, responsible for mind-wandering and self-referential thought, quiets down.
Practice box breathing for 3 to 5 minutes before beginning any work that requires deep focus.
Sit comfortably with your spine straight.
Close your eyes or soften your gaze.
Place one hand on your chest and one on your belly to feel the breath moving through your body.
Keep the breathing smooth and natural, never straining. If a count of 4 feels uncomfortable, adjust to 3 or 5. The rhythm matters more than the specific duration.
What you are training is not just your respiratory system but your attention itself. Each time your mind wanders during the practice, you notice and return to the breath.
This noticing and returning is the repetition that strengthens attention, like lifting weights strengthens muscles. Another breathwork pattern that supports focus is what some traditions call coherent breathing, maintaining a steady rhythm of approximately 5 breaths per minute.
This translates to roughly 6 seconds for the inhale and 6 seconds for the exhale.
This particular rhythm has been shown to maximize heart rate variability and create a state of physiological coherence, where your cardiovascular, respiratory, and nervous systems synchronize. In this coherent state, your body uses energy more efficiently, your thinking becomes clearer, and your emotional regulation improves. Even 10 minutes of coherent breathing can shift your state dramatically, creating a foundation of calm alertness that persists for hours. Breathwork alone is powerful, but when combined with mindfulness practices, its effectiveness multiplies.
Mindfulness is often misunderstood as a vague concept involving peace and acceptance.
In reality, it is a specific form of attention training. When you practice mindfulness, you are training your brain to maintain focus on chosen objects of attention while recognizing and releasing distractions without judgment. This is precisely the skill required for entering and maintaining flow states. A simple mindfulness practice for focus begins with establishing your attention on a single anchor. This might be your breath, a specific sensation in your body, or even a sound.
For the next 5 minutes, your entire task is to keep your attention on that anchor.
Not to think about it or analyze it, but simply to experience it directly.
Within seconds, you will notice your mind wandering.
You might start planning your day, replaying a conversation, or thinking about what you will eat for lunch.
This wandering is not failure. It is completely natural and expected. The moment you notice the wandering is actually the moment of success, because noticing is awareness, and awareness is what you are training. When you notice your mind has wandered, you simply acknowledge it without criticism and return your attention to the anchor. You might silently note thinking or planning to help create distance from the distraction. Then you come back. This cycle of focus, distraction, recognition, and return is the core practice. Each cycle strengthens your attention slightly. Over weeks and months, the changes become substantial. Your baseline ability to maintain focus increases. Your awareness of when you are distracted sharpens. The gap between distraction and recognition shrinks. You develop what might be called meta-attention, the ability to watch your own attention and guide it deliberately. This skill transfers directly to your work and creative practice. When you sit down to write or code or design and your mind starts to wander toward email or social media or worry, you now have a trained capacity to notice that movement and redirect your attention back to the task. You are no longer a victim of your wandering mind. You have become its gentle but firm guide. There is a particular mindfulness technique that is especially valuable for entering flow, what might be called open monitoring or choiceless awareness. After establishing some stability through focused attention practice, you shift to simply observing whatever arises in your field of awareness without trying to control it or focus on anything in particular. Thoughts come and go. Sensations arise and pass. Sounds appear and fade.
You watch it all with equanimity, not grasping at pleasant experiences or pushing away unpleasant ones.
This practice trains a quality of relaxed awareness that is essential for flow.
In flow, you are not forcing concentration through effort. You are allowing your attention to rest naturally on the task because the task itself is intrinsically engaging. Open monitoring helps you access that quality of allowing rather than forcing. Now let us turn to the architecture of time and how you structure your day to support deep focus.
Most people approach their day reactively, responding to whatever demands arise, switching between tasks constantly, never giving their attention the conditions it needs to settle into depth. This approach guarantees that flow will remain rare and accidental. If you want to access flow regularly, you must become intentional about how you organize time. Time blocking is the practice of designating specific blocks of time for specific categories of work. Rather than keeping an open-ended to-do list and jumping between tasks based on mood or urgency, you decide in advance when you will do deep work, when you will handle communication, when you will attend to administrative tasks, when you will rest. This might seem rigid, but it actually creates tremendous freedom. Within each block, you are fully present to that category of activity. You are not wondering whether you should be doing something else. You are not feeling guilty about emails piling up. You have designated time for those things, and this is not that time. For deep focus work, the blocks need to be substantial. 90 minutes to 3 hours is ideal. Shorter blocks rarely allow you to reach true depth because it takes time for your mind to disengage from the previous activity, settle into the new one, and build momentum. Longer blocks risk mental fatigue unless you are very experienced with sustained focus. Schedule these deep work blocks during your peak cognitive hours. For most people, this is morning, typically between 2 and 5 hours after waking. Protect these blocks fiercely. They are not negotiable. They are appointments with your highest potential. During a deep work block, remove all sources of interruption. Silence your phone and place it in another room. Close your email client. Disable notifications on your computer. If you work in an office, find a space where you will not be disturbed, or establish clear boundaries with colleagues about when you are available. Wear headphones even if you are not listening to anything, as a signal that you are in focus mode. These environmental controls are not optional niceties. They are essential infrastructure for focus. Before each deep work session, create what might be called an immersion ritual. This is a consistent sequence of actions that signals to your brain that you are transitioning into deep focus mode. The ritual might be simple. You might make a specific type of tea, sit in a particular chair, review your intention for the session, do 3 minutes of box breathing, and then immediately begin. The specific elements matter less than the consistency. By repeating the same ritual before every deep work session, you create a conditioned response. Your brain begins to anticipate focus as soon as the ritual begins. The transition becomes smoother and faster. Many high performers have elaborate rituals. A novelist might light a candle, arrange papers in a specific way, and read a poem before writing. A programmer might listen to a particular song, clean his desk, and state his goal out loud. An artist might do stretches, sharpen tools, and spend a minute visualizing the work. These rituals are not superstition. They are psychological technology, leveraging the power of association and routine to create predictable states of consciousness. Within your deep work session, consider using the focus warm-up method. Just as athletes do not go from rest to maximum exertion instantly, your brain benefits from a graduated entry into deep focus. Begin with a slightly easier or more familiar aspect of your task. If you are writing, you might start by editing something you wrote yesterday rather than generating new material from scratch. If you are working on a complex problem, you might begin by reviewing what you already know rather than immediately tackling the hardest part. This warm-up period, typically 10 to 20 minutes, allows your mental processes to activate without overwhelming your capacity. As you warm up, pay attention to your state. Notice when your thoughts become more fluid. Notice when distractions lose their pull. Notice when you start to lose awareness of time. These are signals that you are entering the flow channel. When you feel that shift, increase the challenge slightly. Move to the harder problem. Start the new section. Push just beyond your comfort zone. This is the moment to ride the wave of building momentum into deeper territory. The focus warm-up method respects a fundamental truth about attention. Focus is not an on-off switch. It is a gradual dimming of everything except the task at hand, a progressive narrowing of awareness until only the work remains. Trying to force this transition to happen instantly creates internal resistance.
allowing it to unfold naturally creates ease and power. Even with perfect conditions and excellent preparation, your attention will sometimes fragment during a work session. You will find yourself reading the same paragraph 3 times without comprehension. You will notice you have been staring at the screen for 5 minutes without doing anything. You will suddenly remember an urgent task and feel compelled to address it immediately. These moments are not failures. They are normal fluctuations in a complex system. What matters is how skillfully you reset your attention when you notice it has drifted. The attention reset process has 4 steps. First, pause. Literally stop what you are doing. Close your eyes if that helps. Take your hands off the keyboard. Step back from the canvas. Second, breathe. Take 3 slow, deep breaths, bringing your attention fully to the sensation of breathing. This creates a clean break from the distracted state. Third, reorient. Remind yourself of what you are working on and why it matters. Reconnect with your intention. This might take only a few seconds, but those seconds rebuild the sense of purpose that draws your attention naturally to the task. Fourth, return. With fresh attention and renewed purpose, go back to the work. Do not criticize yourself for the distraction. Do not worry about time lost. Simply return. This 4-step process becomes quicker and more automatic with practice. Eventually, you may find that you can reset your attention with a single breath and a moment of intention. The key is recognizing that attention is not something you lose permanently when it wanders. It is something you can always recall, like a well-trained dog that may chase a squirrel but comes back when you whistle. For longer work sessions, build in strategic recovery periods. The brain is not designed for unbroken focus across hours. Even the most skilled practitioners need periodic release. After 60 to 90 minutes of deep work, take a 10 to 15-minute break. But not all breaks are equal. Checking social media or email during your break fragments your attention further. Your brain does not recover. It simply switches to a different mode of high stimulation. Instead, take breaks that genuinely restore your capacity for focus. Walk, preferably outside and preferably in nature. The combination of gentle physical movement, fresh air, and natural stimuli gives your prefrontal cortex a chance to rest while your default mode network engages in background processing that often produces insights. Stretch or do light movement to release physical tension that accumulates during stillness. Hydrate and eat something if needed, but avoid heavy meals that will make you sluggish. Close your eyes and do nothing for a few minutes, allowing your sensory systems to rest. These recovery breaks are not stolen time. They are investments that make the next block of deep work more productive. Some practitioners use the technique of interleaving different types of focus work rather than attempting marathon sessions of the same activity. After 90 minutes of writing, they might switch to research or editing or planning. Each type of work engages slightly different cognitive systems, so switching between them provides a form of active recovery while maintaining overall productivity. This approach works well for people who have difficulty with extended breaks or who are working within time constraints. The key is that the different activities should all be substantive focus work, not shallow tasks like email or administrative work. There is also value in what might be called background focus, allowing problems to work themselves out below conscious awareness. When you are genuinely stuck on a difficult problem, sometimes the best strategy is to walk away completely. Engage in a completely different activity, ideally something physical or creative that occupies your hands and body but leaves your mind relatively free. Garden, cook, play music, exercise. Your unconscious mind continues processing the problem, making connections that your conscious mind could not see. Many breakthrough insights arrive during these periods of apparent non-work. You are not being lazy or avoiding the problem. You are leveraging a different mode of cognitive processing. This phenomenon has been documented extensively in research on incubation effects. When people work intensively on a problem, then take a break, they often solve it more easily than if they had continued working without rest. The break allows fixation on unproductive approaches to fade while strengthening emerging connections. This is why you often wake up with solutions to problems you struggled with the day before.
Sleep itself is a powerful incubation period.
As you develop these practices, you may notice that your relationship with distraction changes fundamentally. Initially, distraction is the enemy, something to fight against and overcome.
With practice, distraction becomes information.
When you notice yourself getting distracted, you can ask what the distraction is revealing.
Are you tired and need rest? Is the task unclear and needs better definition? Is the challenge too high or too low relative to your current skill? Are you avoiding something emotionally difficult?
Distraction becomes a feedback signal that helps you optimize your conditions rather than a character flaw you must eliminate through willpower.
This shift from fighting distraction to learning from it is liberating.
You stop wasting energy on self-criticism and start using that energy for genuine problem-solving. You develop compassion for your own attention system, understanding that it evolved for survival in a very different environment and is doing its best in circumstances it was not designed for. You become a collaborator with your own mind rather than a frustrated manager of an unruly employee. The cumulative effect of these practices is profound. Your baseline capacity for sustained attention increases measurably.
Tasks that once required enormous effort to maintain focus become easier and more natural.
You find yourself entering flow more frequently and staying in it longer.
The quality of your work improves because you can bring more of yourself to it. The time you spend working becomes more satisfying because you are actually present rather than mentally fragmented.
You accomplish more with less strain because you are working with your biology instead of against it. Perhaps most importantly, you begin to reclaim a quality of experience that modern life often strips away: the capacity for absorption.
To be so fully engaged in what you are doing that nothing else exists for that period of time. This absorption is intrinsically rewarding in a way that no external achievement can match. It is the experience of being fully alive, fully present, fully yourself.
And it is available to you not someday in the future when conditions are perfect, but today, in the next block of time you dedicate to meaningful work, if you bring to it the intention and the techniques we have explored here.
Chapter 5: Becoming a Flow-Oriented Person.
There is a profound difference between occasionally accessing flow and becoming a person for whom flow is the natural way of being. The first is a technique, a tool you pick up when needed. The second is a transformation, a fundamental restructuring of how you move through the world.
This transformation does not happen through willpower or sudden revelation.
It happens through the patient accumulation of thousands of small choices, each one reinforcing a new identity, each one deepening a new relationship with your own attention and capability. What we are exploring now is not simply how to enter flow more reliably, but how to become someone for whom presence, clarity, and deep engagement are not exceptional states but the baseline condition of existence. This shift from doing to being, from technique to identity, is perhaps the most important transition you can make in your development as a conscious human being.
When focus is something you do, it requires constant effort and decision-making. You must continually choose to focus, fight against distraction, force yourself to stay on task. This is exhausting and unsustainable.
But when focus becomes part of who you are, when it is woven into your identity at the deepest level, it flows naturally from your sense of self. You do not have to decide to be focused any more than you have to decide to breathe.
It is simply how you operate. The concept of identity level change comes from understanding how human behavior actually works.
Most people try to change by setting goals or modifying behaviors directly. They decide they want to be more productive, so they try to work longer hours or use better planning systems. This approach occasionally succeeds, but more often it fails because it does not address the deeper layer of identity. Your identity, your sense of who you are, is the most powerful force shaping your behavior.
Every action you take is in some sense a vote for the type of person you believe yourself to be.
If you see yourself as someone who is easily distracted, you will act in ways that confirm that identity, even when you consciously want to focus. If you see yourself as someone who is disciplined and present, you will naturally make choices that align with that identity. The path to becoming a flow-oriented person therefore begins not with techniques but with a shift in self-concept. You must begin to see yourself as someone who works deeply, who values presence, who protects their attention, who pursues mastery.
This is not about creating a false persona or pretending to be something you are not.
It is about recognizing capacities that already exist within you and choosing to build your identity around them rather than around your limitations. One powerful way to facilitate this identity shift is through the concept of casting votes for your desired identity. Every time you choose to focus instead of checking your phone, you are casting a vote for being a focused person. Every time you complete a deep work session, you are casting a vote for being someone who does deep work. Every time you notice distraction and gently return your attention to the task, you are casting a vote for being someone who has mastery over their attention. No single vote determines the election, but the accumulated votes create an overwhelming mandate. After hundreds of votes, thousands of votes, your identity shifts not through declaration but through evidence. You have proof, concrete behavioral proof, that you are the type of person who focuses deeply. This is why consistency matters far more than intensity. A single heroic day of 12 hours of deep work does not make you a focused person. It is an anomaly, an exception. But 30 minutes of focused work every single day for a year, that creates identity. That accumulates into undeniable evidence of who you are. The person who meditates for 5 minutes every morning for 6 months has become a meditator far more than the person who does an intensive weekend retreat once. The daily repetition, the showing up regardless of motivation or mood, this is what writes the new identity into your nervous system. As you begin to accumulate these votes, as the identity starts to shift, you will notice something remarkable. The behaviors that once required effort start to require less. Sitting down for deep work becomes easier. Resisting distraction becomes more automatic. Maintaining focus feels more natural. This is not because you have developed superhuman willpower. It is because your behavior is now flowing from identity rather than fighting against it. You are no longer trying to act like a focused person while believing yourself to be distracted. You have become a focused person, and focused people do focused things naturally. But this transformation cannot be forced or rushed. It must be cultivated with patience and self-compassion. There will be days when you do not live up to your emerging identity. Days when you are scattered and reactive and unable to focus. These days are not failures. They are part of being human. What matters is that you do not allow these days to define you or derail your trajectory. You acknowledge them without judgment, extract whatever lessons they offer, and return to your practice the next day. One inconsistent day does not erase 100 consistent ones. The overall pattern is what shapes identity, not the exceptions. To support this identity development, it helps to create clear systems and rituals that make the desired behaviors almost inevitable. This is where the concept of a daily flow ritual becomes essential. A flow ritual is not a rigid schedule that must be followed perfectly. It is a flexible structure that creates conditions for flow while adapting to the realities of your life. The ritual should feel supportive rather than constraining, something you look forward to rather than something you must endure. Your daily flow ritual might begin the night before. Before sleep, you review the next day and identify your most important focus session. What is the one task that, if completed with full presence and effort, would make tomorrow a success? This might be writing a key section of a project, solving a complex problem, having a difficult conversation, creating something meaningful. By identifying this task the night before, you allow your unconscious mind to begin preparing. You may find that you wake with ideas or insights related to the task. You have also removed the decision-making burden from tomorrow morning, when your willpower and decision-making capacity are precious resources. In the morning, the ritual continues with a gentle transition from sleep to wakefulness. Rather than immediately checking your phone or diving into information consumption, you give yourself space to arrive fully in the day. This might include stretching or light movement to wake your body, hydration to support your physiology, a few minutes of meditation or breathwork to settle your nervous system. The specific elements matter less than the intention, which is to begin the day in a grounded, centered state rather than a reactive, scattered one. After this foundational morning practice, you move into your preparation for the deep work session. This is where you might review your intention, gather the materials you need, arrange your environment, and engage in your pre-focus ritual. By this point, you have been building momentum for an hour or more. You are not trying to go from zero to deep focus instantly. You have been gradually awakening your capacity for presence and bringing it to bear on the task that matters most. The deep work session itself becomes the heart of your day, the sun around which everything else orbits. Even if you can only protect 60 to 90 minutes, making that time sacred and inviolable sends a powerful message to yourself and others about your priorities.
This is not negotiable time. This is not time that can be borrowed for meetings or emails or urgent requests. This is the time when you become who you are capable of being. After the deep work session, you transition mindfully rather than immediately scattering your attention. You might take a few minutes to journal about what you accomplished, what insights emerged, what you learned about your process. This reflection serves multiple purposes. It helps consolidate the learning from the session. It provides data about what conditions support your flow and what conditions hinder it. And perhaps most importantly, it creates closure, a sense of completion that allows you to transition to other activities without the deep work session lingering as unfinished business in your mind. The rest of your day contains other obligations, other types of work, interactions with people, meals and movement and rest. But you move through these activities with a different quality of presence because you have already done your most important work. There is a settled satisfaction that comes from knowing you have engaged deeply with what matters. You are not carrying the anxiety of important work left undone. You can be more fully present to whatever is happening in the moment because you are not mentally elsewhere, worrying about the task you have been avoiding. In the evening, you create space for integration and recovery. This might include physical movement to release tension accumulated during stillness, time in nature if possible, activities that nourish you without demanding intense focus. You might read for pleasure, spend time with loved ones, engage in a hobby or creative pursuit that is purely for enjoyment rather than productivity. This recovery time is not optional. It is essential to the sustainability of your practice.
The nervous system cannot maintain high states of focus indefinitely. It needs cycles of engagement and recovery, just as muscles need rest between workouts. Before sleep, you complete the cycle by preparing for the next day.
You identify tomorrow's key focus task.
You review today with gratitude for what you accomplished and self-compassion for what fell short.
You might do a brief body scan or meditation to help transition into sleep. By bookending your day with intentional practices, you create a container that holds and protects your capacity for flow.
This daily ritual does not have to be elaborate or time-consuming. The entire structure, from evening preparation through morning practice to pre-work ritual, might take only 30 to 60 minutes beyond your core focus session. But those minutes create the conditions that make flow accessible. They are the scaffolding that allows you to build consistently toward the person you are becoming. As you maintain this practice over weeks and months, you will notice layers of transformation beyond improved productivity. Your relationship with time changes. Time becomes less of a scarce resource to be anxiously managed and more of a medium in which you live with presence. You stop feeling perpetually behind, perpetually rushed, perpetually anxious about all the things you have not done. You develop trust that if you show up consistently for your deep work, the important things will get done. Not all things, but the important things. And you begin to recognize that doing a few things deeply and well is infinitely more valuable than doing many things shallowly and poorly. Your emotional baseline shifts as well. The anxiety that comes from scattered attention and unfinished important work dissipates. You feel more grounded, more centered, more capable. This is not because your life has become easier or your challenges have disappeared. It is because you have developed genuine capacity to meet those challenges. When you know you can enter flow, when you have direct repeated experience of your highest capability, you approach difficulties with confidence rather than dread. You have evidence that you can handle complexity, that you can persist through obstacles, that you can create and solve and build. Your sense of meaning deepens. Flow states are intrinsically meaningful. They connect you to something larger than your small self with its petty concerns and anxieties. Whether you frame this as connecting to your higher potential, to the work itself, to a sense of purpose, or to something transcendent, the experience carries weight and significance. A life rich in flow is a life that feels worth living, regardless of external circumstances or achievements. This is the great gift of becoming a flow-oriented person.
You are no longer dependent on external validation or success to feel that your life has meaning. The meaning is generated internally through the quality of your engagement.
Yet maintaining this practice over the long term requires more than just good intentions and initial enthusiasm. It requires understanding the obstacles that will inevitably arise and developing strategies to navigate them skillfully.
The first major obstacle is the enthusiasm discipline cycle.
In the beginning, when the practice is new and you are seeing rapid results, enthusiasm carries you forward.
You are motivated and excited. Focus sessions are easy to start because you want to do them. But inevitably, the novelty fades. The initial dramatic improvements plateau. The practice becomes, well, a practice. Something you do regularly whether you feel inspired or not. This is where most people fail. The transition from enthusiasm to discipline is where identity level change happens. Anyone can focus when they are motivated. A flow-oriented person focuses whether they are motivated or not, because that is who they are. This requires developing what might be called emotional flexibility. You learn to work with your current emotional state rather than requiring a specific state to begin. Feeling tired?
You can still do a focus session, perhaps a slightly shorter one or on a slightly easier task.
Feeling anxious?
That anxiety can actually sharpen focus if you channel it appropriately.
Feeling bored? Boredom is often a sign you need to increase the challenge level.
Instead of waiting to feel perfect, you learn to work with whatever you are feeling, adapting your approach while maintaining the core commitment. This emotional flexibility develops through experience. You accumulate evidence that you can focus even when you do not feel like it, and that often once you begin, the resistance dissolves. The dread of starting is almost always worse than the reality of doing. Your brain generates stories about how hard it will be, how unpleasant, how much you do not want to do it. But when you gently disregard those stories and begin anyway, you often find that the work is engaging, the focus is accessible, and the time passes quickly. Each time you have this experience, you trust the stories a little less and trust your practice a little more. Another obstacle is what might be called success drift. As you become more capable, more opportunities arise. People want more from you. Projects expand in scope. Your calendar fills with meetings and commitments. Slowly, imperceptibly, the deep work time that was once protected gets compressed or eliminated. You tell yourself it is temporary, that things will calm down soon, that you will get back to your practice. But the drift continues. This is how people who once had thriving focus practices find themselves, years later, scattered and reactive and wondering what happened. Preventing success drift requires vigilance and clear boundaries. As new opportunities arise, you must evaluate them not just on their individual merit but on their impact on your practice. Will accepting this opportunity protect or erode your capacity for deep work? Will it align with or distract from what matters most? The answer is not always to refuse new opportunities, but to be intentional about what you accept and to ensure that your core practice remains protected regardless of what else you add. This might mean saying no to things that are good in order to protect what is essential. It might mean negotiating terms that preserve your deep work time. It might mean ruthlessly eliminating things that are no longer serving you to make room for what is emerging. There is also the challenge of maintaining practice through major life transitions. Moves, relationship changes, health challenges, career shifts, these disruptions can completely derail even well-established habits. The key is to distinguish between the surface forms of your practice and its essential core. The surface forms might be the specific time of day you work, the particular space you use, the exact duration of your sessions. These will inevitably need to change as circumstances change. But the essential core, the commitment to regular deep engagement with meaningful work, that can persist through any transition if you are flexible about how it manifests. When facing disruption, scale your practice to fit the new reality rather than abandoning it entirely. If your usual 90-minute session is impossible, do 30 minutes. If your dedicated workspace is unavailable, find an alternative. If your normal time is no longer viable, identify a new time. The specific forms matter less than the continuity. By maintaining the practice in some form, even a reduced form, you preserve the identity and make it much easier to expand back to your full practice when circumstances stabilize. As your practice matures, you may find that it begins to extend beyond formal work sessions into the rest of your life. The quality of presence you develop during deep work starts to infuse other activities. Conversations become richer because you are fully there, not planning your next sentence while the other person is still talking. Meals become more satisfying because you are tasting the food rather than eating while reading or watching something. Walking becomes meditative because you are experiencing the movement and the environment rather than lost in thought. This generalization of presence is one of the signs that you are becoming a flow-oriented person at the identity level. It is no longer something you turn on for specific activities. It is your baseline way of being. This does not mean you are always in flow or always intensely focused. That would be exhausting and inhuman. But you are available for flow. Your default is presence rather than distraction. When you engage with something, you engage fully. When you rest completely. You move through the day with greater intentionality and less reactivity. You notice more. You respond more skillfully. You waste less energy on internal conflict and fragmented attention. Living this way also develops what might be called deep mental strength. This is different from the brittle toughness that comes from forcing yourself to endure unpleasant things. Deep mental strength is supple and resilient. It comes from knowing yourself, trusting your capacity, and having developed the skills to regulate your state and direct your attention. When challenges arise, you do not panic or shut down. You assess the situation, determine what is required, enter the appropriate state, and address the challenge. This is not theoretical. You have done it hundreds of times in smaller ways. You know how to focus when focus is needed. You know how to persist when persistence is required. You know how to access your highest capabilities when the situation demands it. This strength also manifests as clarity. When you regularly enter flow states, when you consistently engage with your edge of capability, you develop a clear sense of what you are actually capable of versus what you imagine you are capable of. This clarity cuts through both self-aggrandizement and self-doubt. You are neither inflating your abilities nor underestimating them. You have direct, repeated, recent experience of yourself operating at peak capacity. This creates a stable foundation of self-knowledge that is enormously valuable in navigating life's complexity. With this clarity comes greater alignment between your actions and your values. When you are scattered and reactive, you often act in ways that contradict what you care about. You spend time on things that do not matter while neglecting things that do. You react from fear or ego rather than responding from your deeper wisdom. But when you are living from presence and clarity, your actions naturally align with what matters most to you. You are not perfect, but you are consistent. Over time, this consistency compounds into a life that feels integrated and authentic rather than fragmented and compromised. The social dimension of becoming a flow-oriented person is also significant. As you develop your practice, you will likely find that some relationships deepen while others fade. People who value depth, growth, and presence will recognize these qualities in you and be drawn to them. Conversations become more meaningful. Collaborations become more generative. You attract other people who are committed to mastery and presence. Meanwhile, relationships based on superficial connection or mutual distraction may become less satisfying and naturally diminish. This is not about judging others or considering yourself superior. It is simply that as you change, your resonance changes, and you naturally align with different people. You may also find that you have a positive influence on those around you. Presence is contagious. When you interact with someone who is fully there, it tends to call forth your own presence. As you become more consistently present and focused, others may find themselves being more present and focused around you. You become a kind of tuning fork, helping others access states they have difficulty reaching on their own. This is particularly valuable in professional contexts. A leader who can enter and hold flow states creates conditions for their entire team to access flow. A parent who models deep engagement teaches their children that this way of being is possible and valuable.
There is also a relationship between flow practice and what many traditions call wisdom. Wisdom is not the same as knowledge or intelligence. It is a quality of perception and response that comes from extensive experience combined with reflection. As you spend thousands of hours in flow states, as you repeatedly encounter your edge and work skillfully with the challenges that arise there, as you develop intimate familiarity with your own mental processes, you accumulate a kind of experiential knowledge that cannot be learned from books. You know what it feels like when you are about to lose focus and can intervene before it happens. You know what conditions support your best work and can create them reliably. You know how to read your own state and adjust accordingly. This embodied wisdom becomes a tremendous resource that you carry with you always. At the deepest level, becoming a flow-oriented person is a spiritual practice, though you do not need to frame it in spiritual terms if that language does not resonate. But the qualities that develop, presence, clarity, reduced identification with the small self, capacity to merge with activity, transcendence of time's usual constraints, these are the same qualities that contemplative traditions have cultivated for millennia through meditation, prayer, and other practices. Flow through meaningful work is simply another path to these same developmental milestones. You are using engagement with the world rather than withdrawal from it as the vehicle for transformation. This is why the practice is ultimately not about productivity or achievement, though those often come as byproducts. It is about becoming more fully human, more fully yourself, more fully alive. It is about developing capacities that have always existed within you but were dormant or underdeveloped. It is about learning to access states of consciousness that reveal what is possible when you operate without the usual constraints of self-doubt, distraction, and fragmented attention. The transformation is gradual and sometimes difficult to perceive from inside it. You do not wake up one day and suddenly realize you have become a different person. But if you were to compare yourself today with yourself a year ago, if you had been practicing consistently, the differences would be unmistakable. You are calmer. You accomplish more with less strain. You handle challenges more skillfully. You feel more satisfied with how you spend your time. You have a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. You trust yourself more. You are more fully the person you want to be. This process continues throughout life. There is no end point where you have become perfectly focused and need no further development. There are always deeper levels of presence available, always greater degrees of mastery to explore, always new edges to discover. The practice is not a project with a completion date. It is a way of living, a way of engaging with whatever life brings, a commitment to showing up fully for the gift of consciousness and capability that you have been given. As you continue your practice, remember that you are not doing this alone. Across the world, thousands of others are engaged in similar work. They are sitting down for their deep work sessions, fighting the same battles with distraction, celebrating the same victories of sustained focus, transforming in the same fundamental ways. You are part of a larger community of practice, even if you never meet these others. The work you do on yourself, the presence you develop, the clarity you embody, this contributes to the collective capacity of humanity. Every person who learns to focus deeply, to work with presence, to access flow reliably, makes it slightly easier for others to do the same. You are both beneficiary and contributor to an evolving understanding of human potential. So continue to show up. Continue to cast votes for the identity you are building. Continue to protect your deep work time as sacred. Continue to develop your capacity for presence, for sustained attention, for full engagement. Continue to learn from both success and failure. Continue to refine your practice as you discover what works for your unique nervous system and life circumstances. Continue to extend the qualities of flow into more areas of your life. Continue to become, day by day, session by session, breath by breath, someone who lives with presence, clarity, and deep mental strength. This is not the easiest path. It requires discipline when motivation is absent. It requires saying no to easy pleasures and empty stimulation. It requires confronting your limitations and working patiently at your edge. It requires restructuring your life around what matters rather than what is urgent or entertaining. But it is a path that leads somewhere worthwhile.
It leads to a life of depth rather than superficiality, of meaning rather than distraction, of presence rather than perpetual future focus or past rumination.
It leads to becoming someone who is capable, grounded, and alive.
And that destination, that transformation, is worth every moment of practice, every struggle with distraction, every choice to return your attention to what matters.
The person you are becoming through this practice is not just more productive or successful.
They are more fully human, more fully awake, more fully engaged with the profound gift of being conscious in this complex and beautiful world.
The journey of becoming a flow-oriented person also requires understanding the relationship between structure and spontaneity. Many people believe these are opposites, that discipline constrains freedom and that structure kills creativity. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding. In reality, structure creates the conditions for genuine spontaneity.
When you have reliable systems and practices, when you have developed deep capacity, you are free to respond spontaneously within that container.
A jazz musician can improvise brilliantly not despite their years of structured practice but because of it.
The structure has been internalized so completely that it liberates rather than constrains.
Your flow practice works the same way. The rituals and systems you build are not meant to make you rigid. They are meant to create such solid foundations that you can be flexible and responsive in the moment. When you know you have protected time for deep work, you can be more present during unstructured time. When you trust your ability to focus, you can allow your mind to wander when wandering is appropriate. The structure supports the spontaneity rather than opposing it. This dynamic relationship extends to how you approach challenges and obstacles.
A rigid system breaks when unexpected difficulties arise. But a flow-oriented person has developed flexibility within structure.
If your usual morning practice is disrupted by an early meeting, you adapt.
You find 15 minutes instead of 30.
You use a walking meditation instead of sitting.
You maintain the spirit of the practice while adjusting the form. This adaptability comes from understanding the principles beneath the techniques, from knowing what you are actually trying to achieve rather than just following rules mechanically.
Another dimension that deepens over time is your relationship with failure and difficulty.
In the beginning, when you lose focus or have an unproductive session, it feels like failure. You judge yourself, feel discouraged, wonder if you are capable of sustained practice. But as you accumulate experience, your relationship with these moments transforms. You begin to see them as information rather than failure.
A scattered session might reveal that you are overworked and need rest.
Difficulty focusing might indicate that the task is not well defined or that you have lost connection with why it matters.
Resistance might be wisdom telling you that you are approaching the work in the wrong way.
This shift from judgment to curiosity is crucial. When you approach your practice with harsh self-criticism, you create additional resistance. The voice that says you should be better at this or you are not disciplined enough becomes another obstacle to overcome. But when you approach the same situations with curiosity and compassion, you remove that resistance. You can observe clearly what is happening and respond skillfully rather than adding a layer of judgment that makes everything more difficult.
Developing this compassionate relationship with yourself requires active practice.
When you notice judgment arising, you do not try to suppress it or pretend it is not there. You acknowledge it, there is judgment happening.
And then you gently redirect to curiosity, what is actually happening here? What do I need? What is this situation trying to teach me? Over thousands of repetitions, this pattern of acknowledge and redirect becomes automatic.
You develop a more generous, patient relationship with yourself, which paradoxically makes sustained practice much easier. The practice also develops what might be called temporal wisdom, a sophisticated understanding of how to work with time.
Most people have a very crude relationship with time.
They see it as a scarce commodity that must be filled with activity. They rush from one thing to the next, always behind, always anxious about what is not getting done. But as you develop your flow practice, you begin to understand time's texture and rhythms. You learn that not all hours are equal. Your peak focus hours are profoundly more valuable than your depleted hours. 90 minutes of deep work during your optimal window accomplishes more than 8 hours of fragmented effort at the wrong time.
This understanding leads to radical changes in how you structure your days. Rather than trying to be uniformly productive across all hours, you design your schedule around your rhythms. You protect your peak hours ferociously for your most important work. You schedule meetings and administrative tasks for lower energy periods. You build in recovery time not as an afterthought but as an essential component of sustained performance. You stop feeling guilty about rest because you understand that rest is what makes peak performance possible. You also develop a different relationship with deadlines and urgency. Most people are driven by external deadlines, always reacting to what is most urgent rather than what is most important. But a flow-oriented person generates their own temporal structure. You decide what matters and when it needs your attention. You create internal deadlines that serve your deepest work rather than external demands. This does not mean you ignore external obligations, but you stop being purely reactive to them. You maintain agency over your time and attention even within the constraints of external commitments. This agency extends to how you handle interruptions and unexpected demands. In any real life, interruptions happen. Someone needs your help. An urgent situation arises. Your carefully planned day gets disrupted. A reactive person allows this to derail their entire day. They lose their center and spend the rest of the day in scattered anxiety. But a flow-oriented person has developed the capacity to handle interruption and return to center. You deal with the urgent matter with full presence. Then you deliberately transition back to your deep work. You do not allow one disruption to cascade into hours of distraction. This capacity to return to focus after interruption is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. The social and professional implications of your practice become increasingly significant over time. In a world where most people are scattered, reactive, and operating at shallow levels of engagement, the person who can consistently access deep focus has an enormous advantage. But more importantly, you become valuable in ways that go beyond personal productivity. You become someone who can hold space for complexity, who can think deeply about difficult problems, who can maintain presence during challenging conversations, who can create original work rather than merely reacting to what others create. This creates a kind of gravitational pull. Important projects find their way to you because people know you can handle them. Opportunities arise because your reputation for depth and reliability precedes you. Collaborations deepen because others enjoy working with someone who is fully present and capable. Your career trajectory changes not because you are trying to climb some ladder but because you have developed genuine capacity that others recognize and value. Yet this success brings its own challenges. As your capabilities become known, demands on your time increase. This is where the practice of strategic refusal becomes essential. Every yes to something is a no to something else. If you say yes to every opportunity, meeting, and request, you will inevitably say no to the deep work that made you capable in the first place. So you must become skilled at saying no gracefully but firmly. You must protect your practice even when, especially when, you are succeeding. This requires clarity about what actually matters to you. Not what you think should matter, not what others think should matter, but what genuinely matters to you in your bones. When you have this clarity, decisions become easier. Does this opportunity align with what matters most? Yes or no? Will accepting this preserve or erode my capacity for deep work? If it erodes that capacity, the answer must be no, regardless of how attractive the opportunity appears. Developing this clarity is itself a practice. It requires regular reflection on how you are spending your time and energy. It requires honesty about what truly brings meaning versus what merely brings status or money or approval. It requires letting go of identities and ambitions that you have outgrown but are still carrying out of habit or fear. This ongoing clarification process is not about finding one perfect answer that remains fixed forever. Your priorities will evolve as you evolve. But at any given moment, you need clarity about what matters now, so you can make choices that align with that. The practice also develops what might be called energetic sensitivity. You become more attuned to subtle variations in your state. You notice when you are slightly tired before it becomes exhaustion. You sense when anxiety is beginning to build before it becomes overwhelming. You feel when a particular task or interaction is draining you versus energizing you. This sensitivity allows you to make micro adjustments throughout your day that keep you operating in your optimal range. You take a brief walk before you actually need it. You decline a meeting before your calendar becomes impossibly full. You switch to a different task when you notice your focus beginning to fray. This kind of self-regulation happens naturally, without constant conscious monitoring, once you have developed sufficient sensitivity and self-trust. You are not analyzing your state every moment. But you are aware, and you respond skillfully to what you notice. This is very different from the common pattern of ignoring all signals until something breaks, then trying to recover from burnout or collapse. You learn to make small course corrections continuously rather than requiring major interventions periodically. As your practice matures, you also develop a more nuanced understanding of different types of work and the different qualities of attention they require. Not all focus is the same. Writing requires a different quality of attention than debugging code. Strategic thinking requires something different than detailed analysis. Creative exploration differs from systematic execution. A flow-oriented person learns to recognize these distinctions and match their state to the task. You develop range, the ability to access different modes of consciousness as needed rather than having only one way of working. This range is cultivated through deliberately varying your practice. Sometimes you work on tasks that require intense, narrow focus. Other times you engage with work that benefits from a more open, associative state. You learn what conditions support each mode. You discover how to transition between them. You build a repertoire of states rather than trying to force everything through one mode of working. This versatility makes you far more effective across different types of challenges. There is also a deepening relationship with what might be called productive solitude. In our hyper-connected world, genuine solitude has become rare. Most people are never truly alone with their thoughts. There is always a device nearby, always the possibility of distraction, always the pull of external stimulation. But deep work requires the capacity to be alone with difficult problems, to sit with uncertainty, to think without immediately reaching for input from others. As you practice regularly, you develop comfort with solitude. The anxiety that many people feel when alone with their thoughts diminishes. You discover that your own mind is actually quite interesting when you give it space. Ideas emerge that could never arise in the midst of constant input and interaction. You access depths of thought that require extended, uninterrupted time. This capacity for productive solitude becomes one of your most valuable resources. Yet the practice does not turn you into a hermit. Rather, it makes you more capable of genuine connection when you do interact with others. Because you are not using social interaction to escape from yourself, you can be more fully present to others. Your conversations have more depth because you are not scattered across multiple channels of awareness. You listen more completely because you have developed the capacity for sustained attention. Your presence becomes a gift you can offer to others. This balance between solitude and connection, between depth and breadth, between focus and flexibility, is part of the art of living as a flow-oriented person. You are not trying to be perfect or to eliminate all challenges. You are developing capacity to work skillfully with whatever arises. Some days require intense focus on a single priority. Other days require flexibility and responsiveness to multiple demands. Some periods of life support extended deep work. Other periods are about maintenance and sustainability. You learn to read what is needed and respond appropriately rather than rigidly applying the same approach regardless of context. The philosophical implications of the practice also deepen over time. You begin to see flow not just as a technique for enhanced performance but as a way of being that reveals something fundamental about human nature and consciousness itself. In flow, the sense of separation between self and activity dissolves. You are not a separate entity doing something. You are the doing itself. This experience challenges the default mode of consciousness in which you perceive yourself as a fixed, separate self acting upon the world. These moments of dissolution, repeated hundreds of times, begin to erode the certainty of that separate self. Not in a way that makes you confused about who you are or unable to function.
but in a way that introduces flexibility and spaciousness into your identity. You are less trapped by rigid self-concepts, less defended against experiences that do not fit your self-image, more able to adapt and grow. This is profound psychological and spiritual development happening through the vehicle of focused work. You also develop a different relationship with achievement and success. In the beginning, you might practice deep focus because you want to accomplish more, to achieve certain goals, to reach a particular level of success. And indeed, you likely do accomplish more. But over time, the relationship reverses. Achievement becomes a natural byproduct of full engagement rather than the primary motivation. You work deeply not primarily for what it will produce but because the state itself is intrinsically rewarding. You have discovered that the quality of your experience while working matters more than the outcomes you achieve. This is not about abandoning ambition or goals. It is about holding them more lightly, pursuing them from a place of wholeness rather than insufficiency. You create and build and accomplish things not because you need those accomplishments to feel worthy but because full engagement with meaningful work is how you want to spend your precious life. The desperation around outcomes dissolves. What remains is clean effort, full presence, deep satisfaction in the work itself. This shift has profound effects on your experience of success and failure. When you are attached to specific outcomes, success brings temporary satisfaction followed by anxiety about maintaining it, and failure brings devastation. But when your satisfaction comes from the quality of your engagement, both success and failure become informative feedback rather than identity-defining verdicts. You can celebrate success without clinging to it and learn from failure without being destroyed by it. Your well-being becomes more stable because it is based on something within your control, the quality of your attention and effort, rather than on outcomes that involve countless factors beyond your control. As you continue practicing over years and decades, you also develop a historical perspective on your own development. You can look back and see clearly how you have changed. You remember when sustaining focus for 30 minutes felt impossible, and now 90-minute sessions are routine. You remember when distractions overwhelmed you constantly, and now you navigate them skillfully. You remember when important work felt overwhelming, and now you approach challenges with confidence. This evidence of growth is deeply reassuring. It proves that you are not fixed, that development is possible, that effort compounds over time into genuine transformation. This long-term perspective also helps you weather the inevitable plateaus and temporary regressions that occur. There will be periods when your practice feels stagnant, when you seem to make no progress despite consistent effort. There will be times when stress or life circumstances cause temporary backsliding, when capacities you develop seem to temporarily disappear. If you only have a short-term perspective, these periods feel like failure. But with a longer view, you recognize them as natural parts of any developmental process. You trust that if you continue practicing, you will move through the plateau. You know from experience that temporary regression does not erase fundamental capacity. The integration of your practice into your identity also creates interesting effects in how you move through the world. You begin to structure your environment and life around supporting your capacity for deep work. You make choices about where to live, how to design your workspace, which technologies to use, which commitments to accept, all filtered through the question of whether they support or hinder your practice. This is not about control or rigidity. It is about alignment, ensuring that the structure of your life serves rather than sabotages what matters most to you. You also become more selective about the information you consume. In a world of infinite content, most people consume indiscriminately, letting algorithms and chance determine what enters their awareness. But a flow-oriented person develops a more curated relationship with information. You choose what to read, watch, and listen to based on whether it supports your growth and work. You limit exposure to content that fragments your attention or fills your mind with anxiety without providing actionable insight. You protect the quality of your inner environment the way you would protect the quality of your physical environment. This curation extends to your social environment as well. You become more intentional about who you spend time with and how. You seek out people who are also committed to depth, presence, and growth. You limit time with people who consistently pull you into superficial or draining interactions. This is not about being elitist or isolated. It is about recognizing that human beings are profoundly influenced by those around them, and that protecting your capacity for deep work requires some degree of selectivity about your social environment. The practice also has implications for how you handle success and growing influence. As you become more capable and accomplished, you may find yourself in positions of leadership or mentorship. The question becomes how to use that influence in ways that align with your values. A flow-oriented leader creates conditions for others to access their own capacity for deep work. They protect their team from unnecessary meetings and interruptions. They model sustained focus and full presence. They structure work in ways that allow for both challenge and skill development. They recognize that their primary contribution is not their own productivity but their ability to enable others' optimal functioning. This leadership can manifest whether or not you have formal authority. Simply by living with presence and deep engagement, you create a kind of field that affects those around you. People notice the difference in how you operate. They become curious about what makes it possible. They begin to question their own patterns of scattered attention and superficial engagement. You become, perhaps without intending it, a catalyst for others' development simply by embodying a different way of being. Yet this influence must be held lightly. The greatest error would be to become self-righteous about your practice, to judge others who are not where you are, to turn your growth into a source of superiority. The antidote is remembering your own struggles, maintaining humility about how much you still have to learn, and recognizing that everyone is on their own path at their own pace. You offer what you have discovered as a gift to those who are interested, but without attachment to whether they accept it or pressure that they should. As the years accumulate, your practice begins to feel less like something you do and more like an expression of who you are. The distinction between practicing focus and simply being yourself blurs. You are not putting on a persona of focused person and then taking it off when the work is done. The qualities of presence, clarity, and full engagement have become woven into your character. They show up in how you have conversations, how you experience a meal, how you walk through a forest, how you address any challenge or opportunity. This integration represents the fulfillment of the transformation you began when you first committed to developing your capacity for flow. You have become what you practiced. The thousands of votes you cast for that identity have accumulated into an overwhelming mandate. The person you are now would be barely recognizable to the person you were when you started. Not because you have become someone else, but because you have become more fully yourself, more able to access and express your deepest capabilities and values. Yet even at this stage, the practice continues. There is no finish line where you have perfected focus and need no further development. Each day still requires showing up, still offers new challenges and opportunities for growth, still teaches you something about yourself and about what is possible. The difference is that you now approach this ongoing practice not as a burden or obligation but as a privilege and a joy. You have discovered that a life of deep engagement is worth living for its own sake, regardless of what it produces or achieves. This is the ultimate destination of becoming a flow-oriented person, not some imagined state of perfect focus or constant productivity, but a way of living that is awake, engaged, purposeful, and whole. You have developed the capacity to meet life fully, to work with whatever arises, to access your highest capabilities when needed, and to rest completely when rest is appropriate. You have become someone who lives from presence rather than perpetual distraction, from clarity rather than confusion, from capability rather than overwhelm. And perhaps most importantly, you have discovered that this transformation is available to anyone willing to practice consistently over time. It does not require special gifts or ideal circumstances. It requires only commitment to regular practice, willingness to work at your edge, patience with the inevitable difficulties, and trust in the process. The person you are becoming through this practice is not some distant, idealized version of yourself. They are who you already are when you strip away distraction, self-doubt, and fragmented attention. The practice simply reveals and strengthens what was always there, waiting to emerge.